story opens with an intense firefight happening between the rival factions of the Autobots and Decepticons somewhere on Cybertron. And it's not going well for the good guys as Alita, Huffer, Cup, and Warpath try to weather an assault from all sides. Huffer tells everyone that they've got to find cover right away, and Alita points to a structure at the far end of the area. It's a long way to get there, but the Autobots have no other choice. So Cup and Warpath check with Huffer to come up with a plan on how they'll proceed with their retreat, where Huffer will serve as the group's rear guard. It's a risky proposition though, because Huffer informs them that his shield is only about 7% operational. Still, the Autobot welcomes the task. A second later, Cup gives the order to spring their plan and make a run for it. Huffer dies a hero as he manages to block a few shots from the Decepticons, but ultimately it's blasted when his shield is destroyed. The rest of the team keeps going, Warpath and Cup doing their best to provide cover fire. Alita tries to turn back and help her friends, but Cup simply tells her to save whoever is inside the structure for all of them. And a split second later, Cup falls to Decepticon fire. Alita makes it to the gigantic building, and once she's there, we discover that the Cybertronian that Cup was referring to earlier is none other than Ultra Magnus. Alita is horrified to find what happened to their commander, with only a husk remaining of their once proud leader. We then flash forward to the present, where an aircraft carrier named the USS Harrison floats in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Its captain receives a call from their admiral, who orders the USS Harrison to turn their ship around and head for the coast of Washington, because according to their captain, they're about to find some robots. Meanwhile, we find out that the Decepticon ranks are currently in turmoil as Soundwave and the rest of the group plan a coup to overthrow their current leader, Starscream. Starscream gets wind of their plans and confronts Soundwave about it, even pushing around the little guy to coerce him and the other Decepticons from rebelling. But Soundwave isn't backing down this time. He and the rest of the Decepticons have had enough of Starscream's incompetence, especially after their most recent defeat at the hands of the Autobots. So he tells their current leader that it's time to step down. Starscream tries to discredit Soundwave, but Thundercracker stops him and reminds their whiny leader that Soundwave has challenged him. This is the way, and now they have to fight for leadership of the group. Being the politician that he is, Starscream tries to break tradition and refuse Soundwave's challenge. His pleas don't even remotely work, and he looks to everyone in fear as combat is about to begin. Soundwave delivers a devastating blast to Starscream's shoulder. Cowering in the corner, Starscream tries to offer Soundwave to be the Decepticons' co-leaders, but Soundwave answers his opponent with a cracking punch to the jaw. He then hurls Starscream away with a powerful kick and asks him to yield, but the jet-transforming Decepticon chooses to fight dirty instead and throws a rock right at Soundwave before blasting him. But Soundwave just dodges Starscream's surprise attack. As Starscream lunges forward, Soundwave grabs him by the face and bashes his head into the ground. In pure domination, Soundwave throws away Starscream's gun and opts to beat the spark out of the disposed leader. Starscream tries to fight back with another blast, which Soundwave easily sidesteps. Soundwave continues to unload all his pent-up anger as he calls for Laserbeak to take out one of Starscream's eyes. Still, the failed Decepticon leader deludes himself into thinking that he still has some authority here. He tells Soundwave to stop and all will be forgiven, but Soundwave isn't having any of it. Soundwave leans in and drives his hand into Starscream's chest and pulls out the Cybertronian's insides after delivering a cold line. The only path left is extermination. To end the fight, Soundwave then kicks Starscream's body down the cliff, saying his final goodbye. As the new leader of the Decepticons, Soundwave lets his people know that the parts he took from Starscream will not only be used to reassemble Ravage, but to rebuild, conquer, and destroy together. After that, everyone bends the knee and Soundwave is met with thunderous chants of the name of their new leader. Somewhere else, an obviously ticked off Carly learns how to use a gun. RC approaches her and asks if she can join her target practice. The Autobot then accidentally blasts all the bottles and cans that were serving as Carly's targets, which impresses her. The female Autobot then expresses how much she resents being such a good shot, but Carly tells her not to feel bad about it because those same skills are going to be useful for when they destroy Starscream. RC then warns Carly to not be consumed by her hate, but the girl simply brushes her off. Still, the female Autobot remains cordial and apologizes for overstepping her bounds. She then tells Carly how much the girl reminds RC of herself in the past. As the Autobot reveals, she used to be consumed by hate and rage against the Decepticons. You see, the evil Cybertronians killed her whole clan, and then left this gaping revenge-shaped hole in her soul. It was only through the intervention of Ultra Magnus that Arcee was able to pull herself from the brink. Carly listens to all of this, but she ultimately decides to ignore Arcee. While this is happening, we find that Jazz and Cliffjumper are inside their base, watching the two. Cliffjumper confides in his friend of how much he regrets being too weak to pull the trigger when he had Starscream in his crosshairs. But Jazz reassures him that there's no shame in showing mercy, even for someone as deplorable as Starscream. Jazz sort of makes Cliffjumper feel better when he tells him that he's not the only one being ignored by these young humans at this time, because we immediately find out that Spike hasn't been talking to Optimus ever since he found out about his dad's death. As Spike puts it, he's not mad at Optimus, he just needs time to process everything. Later, the Autobots roll out to their base, and we find that Optimus blames himself for what happened to Spike. He suddenly envisions himself holding a baby in his hand, which causes Optimus to swerve and fall towards a clearing. Ratchet comes to his aid to ask what's wrong, but all Optimus can tell his friend is that he doesn't know. Not long after that, Wheeljack informs the rest of the Autobots that reviving their teammates would take more time than usual. He has to do it manually, considering that the scuttled Decepticon Skywarp has locked him out of Teletran 1. The rest of the team expresses their frustration, and Arcee tells everyone that they have to find the Decepticons quickly. And in that moment, Optimus walks in to humbly, yet firmly, ask Wheeljack to do the best he can to revive the rest of their friends. That's because, as Optimus puts it, they might have the upper hand now, but who knows how long before the Decepticons are able to mobilize again. Wheeljack then tells their leader that they're going to need a vehicle that will give them a bird's eye view of the area if they're gonna look for their enemies. Optimus says that he has a plan for that before declaring that the Autobots are coming for each and every Decepticon out there. We then see Carly and Spike hanging out by the lake. Cliffjumper approaches the two kids and offers them a couple of drinks, but Carly still isn't on good terms with the little Autobot. Spike tries to urge her to pick up the olive branch that Cliffjumper is handing her, but she refuses. Instead, Carly lashes out and tells Cliffjumper how frustrated she is that he allowed Starscream to escape. According to her, she has no way of trusting Cliffjumper now that she knows he couldn't make the hard choices. Back at Cybertron, we find that Alita has taken Ultra Magnus as she desperately tries to discover a way out of the stronghold. Plus, we also learn that Ultra Magnus is still alive, but he's pretty much lost the will to live after being tortured and stripped for parts for so long. Ultra Magnus even asks his old friend Alita to take him out and end his suffering, but Alita won't do it. Instead, she promises Ultra Magnus that she's not letting him go after all this time. However, if they both get captured, she'll make sure to end both of their sparks together. On Earth, we discover that the USS Harrison has finally detected the robots that they were hunting via their ship's radars. But the tables turn quickly when the sailors aboard the aircraft carrier discover that those aren't ordinary robots, it's Soundwave and the Decepticons. The evil Cybertronians hijack the USS Harrison, with Soundwave specifically ordering his team to not sink it until they're right above their intended destination. All the people aboard the ship desperately make their escape, hopping on hundreds of lifeboats to take them to safety. At the same time, Thundercracker grabs the captain of the ship and threatens to kill the old man. But the Decepticon ultimately lets the captain go. The old man then runs to one of the rescue boats to get as far away from their assailants as possible. Thundercracker simply watches the human drift away on their lifeboats, but Soundwave approaches him to ask why he's letting these people go. Showing mercy and pity, Thundercracker informs his leader that they couldn't do anything to them even if they wanted to, but Soundwave makes him realize that they shouldn't leave any witnesses, so the Decepticons take out each and every soldier right then and there. Back inside the Ark, Wheeljack is still trying his best to get back control of Teletran 1 and revive their fellow Autobots, but it turns out that Skywarp continues to block them from having access to it. Optimus comes up with a plan to bring Skywarp to their side by showing him a recording of what his fellow Decepticons did to him. At that moment, Carly bursts into the room to try and blow up Skywarp with a rocket launcher, but Arcee intercepts the projectile at her own risk. Suddenly, Wheeljack's legs start to reassemble, and they realize that Skywarp is finally helping them through Teletran 1. Carly isn't too happy about the Autobots working with a Decepticon, so she storms out of the room. Later, Arcee checks in on Carly where the teenager asks why they don't use their tremendous size and power to their advantage. Arcee then tells her that it's because the Autobots, Optimus especially, wants nothing but peace. According to Arcee, Optimus might not show it, but he's actually the one who has lost the most in the war against the Decepticons. Back at Soundwave's team, we find out that they've sunk the USS Harrison to the bottom of the sea, and he and Thundercracker make their way to the ocean floor. It's revealed that they're going to use the nuclear power fueling the USS Harrison to power the Nemesis, the Decepticon mothership. Back at the Ark, Optimus has another dream about a toddler. However, he shakes it off when he hears someone calling for his name. We then find out that Optimus's plan to have an aerial vehicle was to partially revive Jetfire, who is stuck in his jet form, and use their old friend to search for the Decepticons. Jetfire isn't too happy to be brought back to life, especially as a mere vehicle. Optimus apologizes for this, but tells his old ally that they had no other choice. Back inside the Nemesis, Soundwave and the rest of the team hear loud banging sounds from deep within the ship. They all know who it is, so Thundercracker asks their leader if they should open the door. Soundwave gives the order, and we discover that it's Astrotrain, who promptly goes on a warpath as he tries to look for the Decepticon who put them in that prison, Megatron. Astrotrain beats up a few of the other Decepticons, but Soundwave ultimately manages to calm him down. He promises Astrotrain that he can do anything he wants with Megatron when they find him, but for now, Soundwave has a mission for his fellow Decepticon. The Ark scanners get a hit on the Decepticons around the same time, and Optimus Prime orders his people to mobilize. Carly tries to join them, telling Optimus that she can fight off their enemies with the bag of guns she's bringing, but Optimus firmly refuses. So RC does the kid a solid and makes Carly her iron apprentice. From now on, they'll be inseparable and pretty much like family. Still, Optimus doesn't allow them to join the fight against the Decepticons, as he orders both RC and Carly to stay at the Ark and guard it. Shortly after that, Optimus, Cliffjumper, and Jazz hop inside Jetfire and fly away to their enemy's location. Inside the Nemesis, Soundwave informs his allies that their ship will not fly again, but they're not here to do that anyway, because there's only one thing that they need from the Nemesis right now. It's antenna, because it's with this antenna that Soundwave is able to call for backup as fellow Decepticon Shockwave flashes on the Nemesis screen and asks the new Decepticon leader if it's really him. Not long after that, Optimus's team arrives near the Decepticons' location. What they don't know, however, is that Soundwave and Shockwave have already created a link between the Nemesis and their base at Cybertron. At that moment, Optimus and his crew witness a whirlpool form in the middle of the Pacific Ocean just as they prepare to make their approach. A huge red energy pulse suddenly springs out of the whirlpool and shoots up into space, grazing Jetfire and forcing the Autobots to crash on the sea floor. When Optimus comes to, he sees that the red energy pulse came from a Cybertronian gateway linking the two worlds. The Constructicons guard it and open fire when they see the Autobots in their midst. And almost at the same moment, Shockwave steps out of the gateway. A firefight ensues between the two Cybertronian factions. Shockwave then transforms into a powerful Astro Magnum as he leaps toward Soundwave's hand. The new Decepticon commander prepares to shoot Cliffjumper, but Ratchet comes to his rescue and ends up taking the blast for his friend. Shockwave starts to gloat as Cliffjumper cradles the body of his friend. But before they can shoot again, Optimus leaps into action and kicks Soundwave in the face, which forces him to let go of the Astro Magnum. Shockwave transforms back to his humanoid form and prepares to fight with the Autobot leader. Meanwhile, Carly, RC, and Wheeljack are on their way to the local dam to try and siphon some of its power into the Ark. However, they eventually encounter the town militia blocking their path. The people are just about ready to shoot down the Autobots when Carly stands between them to try to explain everything. Back at the hospital, Spike's doctor informs him that he might not be able to walk again. Their consultation is interrupted when Astrotrain arrives outside the establishment demanding Spike. The doctor rushes out of the hospital to tell the Decepticon to stop, and surprisingly enough, Astrotrain is relatively agreeable. According to him, he doesn't want to harm anyone innocent, but he has a mission, so he might have to do it in order to get to Spike. At that moment, Spike appears before Astrotrain and agrees to come with him. The Decepticon then whisks him away after transforming into a space shuttle. While this is happening, we find out that the Decepticons have ganged up on Optimus. Jazz tries to help him, but one of the Constructicons runs him over before he can reach his friend. Ultimately, Shockwave gets the better of Optimus, and the Decepticon gives him one of the most brutal tombstone pile drivers you'll see in comics, which knocks out the Autobot leader. At the same time, we find out that the other Decepticons have caught up to Alita and Ultra Magnus within the Citadel. Alita desperately tries to escape as she shoots her way through its halls. Ultimately, she sees a red light emanating emanating from a corner in one of the rooms of the structure. With no other choice and no other exits to be found, Alita and Ultra Magnus head towards the light, only to discover that it's the same gateway that Shockwave used to come to Earth. The two arrive in the middle of the Autobots and Decepticons skirmish, and Alita is surprised to see Optimus there. At that moment, Alita notices that the enemy Combaticons are also coming to Earth from the portal. They get ready to merge, so Alita thinks on her feet and grabs one of the rifles lying on the ground. She then blasts the gateway to make sure that the Combaticons were unable to mobilize. However, the chaos escalates when Soundwave orders the men to destroy all Autobots in the area. He then blasts Jazz and Cliffjumper, and they both take a direct hit. Not far away, Optimus tries to go back and rescue Cliffjumper and Jazz, but Alita urges him to retreat. Alita drags Optimus away and tells him to transform this instant. He does as he's told, as he, Alita, and Ultra Magnus make their escape. The downed Cliffjumper sees this, and all he can do is watch his leader drive off into the distance. Soundwave gives the order to chase them, but Shockwave convinces him to let them go, because according to him, Optimus and the Autobots are now mere ants compared to what they're planning. With the skirmish over and done with, Shockwave approaches the two immobilized Autobots and prepares to conduct brutal experiments on them. Meanwhile, Astrotrain and Spike make their way towards the Nemesis, and the two start talking. He pretty much tells Spike that he and the Decepticons aim to siphon off Earth's energy and resources to bring life to Cybertron again. But even so, he can commiserate with Spike for what they have to do to the boy's planet. Astrotrain then tells Spike the truth, that Shockwave will probably torture him. But at that same moment, a little blue gadget latches itself onto Astrotrain's belly, which then causes the Decepticons' engines to shut down. Astrotrain starts to nosedive and tells Spike to brace himself for a crash landing. They skid through the ground and it seemingly knocks out Astrotrain. A few moments later, Spike hears a voice calling for him. He turns around to see an Autobot named Beachcomber who tells him he's there to rescue him. We then find out how Beachcomber arrived on Earth. It turns out that he found himself marooned on a moon after Skywarp tossed him out of the ship during a battle that happened between the Autobots and the Decepticons millions of years ago. In fact, he just hung around on the moon's surface for ages until he saw humans land on it in 1969. Beachcomber took the opportunity to hitchhike on NASA's shuttle on their return flight. Ultimately, he landed on Earth and managed to locate the Ark not long after that. However, Beachcomber decided not to reactivate his fellow Autobots within the ship for fear that it'll only put Earth in danger when the Cybertronian War spills over to this planet. We find out that he had been telling this whole story to Spike in the present. As for Astrotrain, well, Beachcomber managed to subdue him at this moment, and for the most part, this Autobot has become a pacifist. He even offers Astrotrain a drink and calls him a friend. Beachcomber then finds out that the Decepticons are planning on harvesting Earth to revitalize Cybertron, an initiative led by the infamous Shockwave. Spike asks him what they should do when they see the red energy pulse looming in the distance, but Beachcomber remains firm with his decision. He wants no part of this war. Back at the Nemesis, Shockwave catches Soundwave trying to repair Ravage. Shockwave chastises his fellow Decepticon for wasting his time in such trivial matters as he takes Ravage and attempts to toss him into the recycling bin. Before he could do it though, Shockwave sees something outside the Nemesis. This prompts him to run out of the room and tell Soundwave to come with him. There, they find that whales and other marine life have gathered near the barrier of the Nemesis. The two Decepticons marvel at the beauty of these creatures as Shockwave informs his friend how wonderful it is to have such beautiful creatures aid their cause. At that same moment, one of the Constructicons tells Shockwave that their feeder is ready, and the feeder proceeds to suck up all the nearby marine life and turn them into mush. Somewhere else, the Autobots have finally reactivated their reactor. Optimus, Alita, and Ultra Magnus arrive at the Ark, and Arcee recognizes her old mentor. Optimus then informs Wheeljack about what happened to his brother Ratchet, and the other Autobot engineer does not take the news too well. Inside the Nemesis, Shockwave starts to torture Jazz and Cliffjumper. Thundercracker becomes absolutely mortified when he discovers this. However, Soundwave tells him not to dwell on such things. Just outside the Nemesis, Combaticons Onslaught and Brawl are just hanging out when they overhear Soundwave and Thundercracker having a little chat not too far away. Thundercracker is opposed to the fact that Shockwave is torturing their prisoners, since it's not honorable. However, the Decepticon commander tells them that it's a necessary evil that they have to accept if they want Shockwave's help. The two start to get into an argument when Thundercracker presses Soundwave to rescue his brother Skywarp at the Ark. But at this point, Soundwave shows how fearsome he can be when he tells Thundercracker to never forget that his life belongs to him now. Somewhere else, Optimus Prime and Alita have a conversation about their past. Alita knows what Shockwave is gonna do to Earth, so Optimus asks her if she will help him stop the Decepticons' plans. Meanwhile, Shockwave gathers the Decepticons in front of the feeder and declares it's now time to realize their plans. He then turns the machine on, and all the accumulated energy that the feeder acquired from Earth is shot through the sky and directly to Cybertron, which has now arrived near the planet's orbit. Beachcomber hops on a super cool motorized surfboard to investigate the feeder's effects the moment it happens. He glides through the waves to see various marine life getting sucked up in a vortex towards Cybertron. While this is happening, Arcee takes a moment to pay her old mentor, Ultra Magnus, a visit inside the Ark's medical bay. Alita overhears Arcee talking to the unconscious Ultra Magnus and tells her sister that she had made her choice when she abandoned Cybertron. This grinds Arcee's gears and she punches Alita in the face. Carly then asks Arcee what happened to Ultra Magnus, to which she tells the girl about what Shockwave did, and it's the same thing that he's probably going to do to Cliffjumper and Jazz as they speak. Nearby, Optimus asks Wheeljack how Ultra Magnus repairs are going. The Autobot engineer informs their leader that it's gradually progressing, but without Ratchet fully reviving Ultra Magnus would mean that they're going to have to spend all the Energon they gathered from the dam. But before he can finish his sentence, Ultra Magnus gets up from the bed and tells Optimus that he wants to fight in this new resistance. Meanwhile, Soundwave tries to ask Shockwave if he can travel back to Cybertron to get the part he needs to repair Ravage, but Shockwave continues to be a jerk and tells Soundwave to forget about Ravage and basically realign his priorities as a Decepticon. Shockwave then goes through a portal connected to his fortress on Cybertron where he meets with his Combaticon underlings. He then tells them to man their battle stations as the Autobots would surely mount an offensive against them soon. At the Ark, Wheeljack tells Optimus about how the Nemesis and the feeder are basically connected to Shockwave's fortress on their home planet. So, to stop the harvest from continuing, they have to destroy the Nemesis, which would interrupt the link between the two worlds. Optimus proposes that they prioritize rescuing Jazz and Cliffjumper, which ticks off Alita. She lashes out and tells Optimus that saving the two would mean abandoning all the other Autobot resistance fighters on their home planet. Optimus makes Alita realize that they can save both, considering that they have fine allies fighting with them. Shortly after, Arcee gears up for war and confuses Carly when she mentions that each and every Decepticon deserves to be taken out. Alita walks in on them to apologize to Arcee for what happened earlier. After that, Alita meets with Optimus just as he finishes paying his respects to the Fallen. Alita asks if they're going to meet the Decepticons head-on, to which Optimus answers that he has a different, more subtle plan. He reveals that they're going to use Skywarp, who has now started working with the Autobots, to teleport into the Nemesis and plant charges that would blow it to bits. With the plan all set, Carly approaches them and tells the Autobots that they're making a big mistake leaving her out of the fight. However, Arcee convinces her to stay back when she tells her that she doesn't want what happened to Ultra Magnus happening to Carly. We find out that the reason Carly is so pushy about joining the skirmish is because she wants to save Cliffjumper. At that moment, Skywarp opens up a portal to the Nemesis, and Arcee promises Carly that she'll save Cliffjumper before she, Optimus, and Alita proceed with their mission. Somewhere else, Beachcomber gets Spike to agree to come with him, and the two make their way into the forest inland. Eventually, Spike and Beachcomber encounter a deer in the middle of the forest, which reminds the boy of Optimus's compassion for Earth's life. At that moment, he tells Beachcomber that he can't run away with him. Meanwhile, the feeder continues harvesting Earth's energies, so while waiting for the process to be completed, Shockwave goes back to his first passion, torturing Autobots. We find out that neither Cliffjumper nor Jazz have been broken yet. In fact, Jazz even lets out one of his music-themed puns, which ticks off Shockwave so much that he slaps the Autobot right in the face. But Jazz's confidence is immediately shaken when Shockwave tells him that he's gonna torture Cliffjumper harder than before. Fortunately, Optimus and his crew arrive inside Shockwave's chambers just in time to save their friends. Alita rushes into the room shortly after that to inform the other Autobots that the explosive had been set all around the Nemesis. Arcee then pins Shockwave to the wall and prepares to take him out. However, Optimus tries to convince her not to push through with it, which only gives Shockwave enough time to fend off Arcee and escape. In fact, Optimus's whole bleeding heart speech ends up with Shockwave grabbing Cliffjumper as a hostage. They then chase him out of the room only for the Constructicons to block their path. And at that same moment, the Constructicons merge and become Devastator. Suddenly, a portal opens inside the Nemesis, and both Wheeljack and Ultra Magnus join the fray. However, the mere sight of Shockwave makes Ultra Magnus triggered. Instead of fighting their enemies, Ultra Magnus starts to have a panic attack and runs away from the battlefield. Shockwave sees this and is absolutely elated that he's broken Ultra Magnus's mind. Now, all that's left to do is break the Autobots. Carly sees her Autobot friends in trouble from the Arc screen, especially Cliffjumper, as we find Soundwave holding the minuscule Autobot by the neck. Shockwave tells his fellow Decepticons that it's time to end this fight, so he transforms into the Astro Magnum and right into Soundwave's hands. Witnessing all of this, Carly decides to ignore her marching orders and provide backup for her friends. The Autobots are currently pinned down from their enemies' heavy firepower. All the while, Carly hops into her van to enter the portal that leads to the Nemesis. Optimus and his friends try to return fire, and Wheeljack asks him if he can finally detonate the charges that Alita set and end the skirmish. Optimus tells his subordinate that he could do that, but it would mean Cliffjumper would be engulfed by the explosion. Suddenly, they hear Carly's voice a short distance away. They see that the girl has made a super sick save with her van as she crashes it right into Soundwave. Cliffjumper manages to hang on to the hood of Carly's van when it dashes away after wrecking Soundwave. Carly and Cliff get a good look at each other and they forget all about their fight. But their reunion is interrupted when Devastator hammer fists the van right into the ground. Cliff sees this, so he rushes back to the van to pull Carly out of the driver's seat. Just in time too, because Devastator stomps the whole van. Optimus commands all the Autobots to mobilize and retrieve their friends, and it's no understatement that the urgency is real because Devastator is absolutely ragdolling Cliffjumper right now. He goes flying into the gateway connected to Cybertron before Optimus could reach him. And oh man, Devastator punted Cliff so hard that he ended up crashing right into the bumbling Combaticons on the other side. Optimus decides to get some payback, so he jumps high up in the air and shoots the gigantic Decepticon in the face with his particle beam cannon. At the same time, he tells Alita to put pressure on their enemy, so she rushes into the fray and does a classic Empire Strikes Back move by wrapping the line around Devastator's legs to pull him down. It's super effective because Devastator crashes right onto the Harvester, putting a large Constructicon-shaped wrench in Shockwave's plans. With the Mega device destroyed, not only does the energy siphon stop, but it also makes Cybertron teleport back to its original coordinates in space. Seeing this happen, Shockwave rushes into the gradually closing gateway while telling Optimus and his team that he's gonna have to grab more Decepticons from Cybertron and make his enemies pay. Wheeljack tells Optimus that now it's time to detonate the charges and put an end to this devastation, but Optimus still refuses to do it, not until he saves Cliffjumper, so the Autobot leader rushes into the gateway too. On the other side, the Combaticons have Cliffjumper on the ropes and they prepare to take him out, but Optimus arrives just in time to rescue the little guy before they can pull the trigger. Shockwave witnesses this and desperately calls for his underlings to stand and fight, but they still don't listen. With no other allies around, Shockwave plays it dirty and holds Cliff hostage again. He tells Optimus that he's going to take Cliff out if he takes one more step, but the Autobot leader blows off Shockwave's arm before he can even finish his threat. Suffice it to say that Optimus has had it up to here with Shockwave, so like a true badass he tosses the rifle away as he approaches the mad Decepticon to put his hands on him. Shockwave tries to shoot for a takedown, but Optimus denies it and instead catches his enemy in a full mount. He then proceeds to give Shockwave some good old-fashioned ground and pound, with each punch echoing throughout the halls of the stronghold. In the middle of beating down the Decepticon, Optimus gets another vision of the baby, but this time, it's way darker as he sees an image of metallic veins engulfing the infant. The vision shocks Optimus to his core that he forgets his own strength and ends up crushing Shockwave's head with his bare hands. He can't even believe what he just did when he regains his senses. Even Cliff is shaken with what Optimus just did. But not Alita, because she sees all of this unfold and congratulates Optimus for returning to his old, savage self again. Optimus tells her that he didn't mean to kill Shockwave like that, but there's no time to debate because Cybertron is quickly phasing out of Earth's orbit and Optimus doesn't plan on disappearing with it. He takes Cliffjumper and tells Alita it's time to go home, but the female Autobot screws them over when she blasts the gateway that will lead them back to Earth. Optimus asks Alita why did she do that, to which she replies it's because she wants Optimus to stay on Cybertron to continue fighting in their war. Alita then points out that they can use all the Energon that Shockwave harvested from Earth to their advantage, but Optimus doesn't want to reap those ill-gotten gains, so he finally tries to detonate the charges. But we find out that Alita betrayed Optimus and the Autobots when she reveals that she's never even set the explosives around the Nemesis. Alita explains that they can continue harvesting Earth's energy to help them win the war. Of course, Optimus is against this, so he points his particle beam cannon right at the Energon vats. Alita pleads with him, telling the Autobot leader that Cybertron needs him, that she needs him. But Optimus's sense of honor prevails as he blasts the vats in spite of Alita's pleas. The destruction causes a huge blast and sends them flying. Alita is left in the ruins of Shockwave's citadel, and a mix of rage and disappointment washes over her as she realizes that Optimus chose Earth over his own people. We find out that not only did Optimus blow off Shockwave's citadel, but he even managed to take a huge peninsula-sized chunk of Cybertron with him. He and the Cybertronian plate came crashing down on Earth, and the velocity from entering Earth's atmosphere causes Optimus's entire body to ignite. He thinks that this is the day his spark will finally go out, and is at peace with that. But Beachcomber comes in clutch on his super cool surfboard to grab Optimus to save him. They surf through the water vortex back to Earth. When Optimus turns his head, he sees his handiwork and can only ask himself what he's done. Because he didn't just cause another global emergency on Earth, he caused irreparable damage to Cybertron.